Donald Trump says he and Xi Jinping have agreed to halt their trade war while they work to negotiate a permanent end to the tensions. It is the reason why the market is up so sharply today. But it's been nearly 1 year of tariffs, threats of more, confusion overall. And it's roiled markets, tightened investment, shaken businesses. Now the two sides are pressing the pause button. The duration of the pause is 90 days, according to the Americans. The Chinese haven't admitted that. That should give time to hammer out some sort of deal. Now, during the time of the pause, US tariffs stay at 10% on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. The quid pro quo for this undertaking is that in return, China will make substantial purchases of US goods. No specifics are given, and nothing is mentioned in the Chinese statement, either about the purchase of goods or indeed about the 90 days. Donald Trump has tweeted that China will reduce and remove tariffs on American cars. That tariff stands at 40%. Again, the Chinese are not speaking about that. In fact, they've declined to admit that that's what's going to happen. Also, the Qualcomm deal with NXP. Now, China blocked it. The White House says that it could be back on and that the president of China would likely accept it. Big problems there, of course, is that Qualcomm's already paid a breakup fee of $2 billion to NXP. So that's another matter. But on the strategic issue, no comment from the Chinese. Now, if after 90 days there's no deal, well, then the tariffs jump back from 10 to 25%, and we are very firmly back to where we began at the trade war. Speaking at Monday at the White House, the Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin praised the Chinese for their willingness to make real commitments and promised this time they are not kicking the can down the road.
I think there's a specific understanding that we're going to now turn the agreement that the two presidents have into a real agreement over the 90 days. Obviously, some of the issues are going to need to be phased in. Some of the issues may need more detailed work, but the idea is there will be a real agreement. And as I've said, this is the first time there was a commitment from China that the agreement will include specific dates, specific targets, specific action items. This is not going to be just kicking the can down the road.
Robert Lawrence Kuhn is a long-time advisor to the Chinese leaders and the author of How Chinese Leaders Think. Please, then, how will they be interpreting the deal that was done yesterday, or sorry, on Friday?
Everybody is pleased that there is the pause. 90 days is very short, of course. We have to look at the short term, mid-term, and long term. Let's look at the background for where China is today. This is the 40th year, the anniversary of China's reform and opening up. On December 18th, 1978, Deng Xiaoping made his famous speech, which transformed China from ideologically driven class struggle to economic development. It's a big deal in China. There's a big celebration coming up. President Xi has said that the first big goal for China is 2020, to have a moderately prosperous society, specifically to eliminate all extreme poverty in China. That means they will have taken 800 million people out of poverty. So that's their overview. And so they look at the status quo that they've had with America as something that's good for both sides. We have critical issues that we have to deal with: open markets, IP protection, forced technology transfer, cybersecurity, cyber theft. It's a lot of issues on the table.
The two sides are seeing Friday's deal in very different ways.
That always happens.
Right, but the Chinese...
That's diplomacy. That's the definition. We saw that in the spy plane collision. We saw that in the bombing of the Yugoslavian embassy in 1999. Both sides had different interpretations to their domestic markets.
But they're not even admitting, or at least acknowledging, a 90 days, let alone all this business of we're going to buy more cars.
Well, look, in China, there is a debate among Chinese economists what's good for China. Many economists tell me privately, personally, one-on-one, like I'm talking to you right now, that China needs to open its markets. It needs to have IP protection. It shouldn't support state-owned enterprises much, but they have internal debate. Those economists are pleased to see this pressure going on. But China cannot admit that publicly because that undermines the rejuvenation of China, the strength of the government, the national pride. I mean, we have to understand understand both sides are speaking to their domestic audiences, but hopefully when they get together privately, they'll talk business.
Do you believe that they can and or will make the structural changes necessary to get a long-term deal? Because it seems as if President Trump is not going to be satisfied long-term with agreeing to buy a few extra bits of this or that of agriculture.
Totally agree with that, and I think that's right. We're going to have to see. I mean, it's easy to predict 10 years in the future, but not 10 days. So, I mean, we'll see where we go. But I think the people in China who I talk to say they recognize this time is different. And what they're going to do is they're going to focus on the changes that they believe are good for China. You actually saw that in some of the announcements today. We're going to do the kinds of things that help our domestic economy as well. That sounds like it's a play for their own domestic audience to show they're not conceding, but in fact, it is really the case.
The president talked about we're going to be selling, the US president, we're going to be selling large amounts of, well, the US is going to sell large amounts of agriculture to the Chinese, and tariffs on automobiles down from 40% maybe to zero. This is mercantilist stuff. This isn't trade deal.
Totally agree with that, and those are superficial things. They make headlines. They're easy to understand, but they're not the substance of what's happening here.
You believe that there's a shift in perspective, and this dinner shifted things?
I believe there has been a shift. I wouldn't tell you the dinner did it, but over time there is recognition that this time is different.
Thank you, sir. Next time when it's different, you'll come back and tell us.
Oh, absolutely.
Bye. Again, good to see you, sir. Thank you.